Welcome, everyone, to this Good Leadership Podcast. My name is Charles Good, your host and the president of the Institute for Management Studies. This podcast is designed to provide you with actionable insights and tools that you can use from discussing the research, stories, and background from recognized experts and practitioners to accelerate your impact in your current role. My goal is what we've discussed today will be immediately actionable and useful to you, and I'd love to hear your comments for this episode about what you're planning on implementing. Today, I'm very glad to be joined by Linda Galindo, a former radio news personality turned best-selling author, educator, and keynote speaker on the topic of personal and organizational accountability. Her management consulting firm specializes in accountability education to a wide variety of organizations and Fortune 500 companies and industries, including healthcare, government, financial services, and nonprofit. She's also an expert in the field of leadership and accountability. Welcome to the program, Linda.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'd love for you to let our listeners know your story. I know it, but I'd love for them to know kind of how that transition happened from radio news personality into the accountability space, if you wouldn't mind.
I love telling it, to be honest.
I know you do.
I think the question is, how do you get into spending your whole life teaching accountability to people? I was a radio news personality, and I always wanted to do broadcast journalism. I always wanted to do radio. Did that for, right about 11 years. And there was a sea change in the whole business of news. And so as a morning news anchor, I was producing my own show. And one day, the person that was my boss came in and said, "Hey, I want to look at your story lineup." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because we're having a change that's coming up. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to have the sales manager of the station have a look at this as well and decide what stories you can and cannot do." And it's strange conversation. What do you mean you're going to decide what stories I can and cannot do? Well, if they're an advertiser and the story is negative, the sales manager is going to want you to take that down. And we're going to do this. Yes, we're going to do this. This is what we're doing. And that was a significant change in my mindset of, well, hold on a second. That doesn't ring right with everything I learned in school about what journalism was going to be. Yes, I'm a morning news personality to get people to listen to heart and help and home kind of stories, but this did not ring right. And so I decided that I was going to, instead of go on to the next bigger market and be in radio for my career, do something else. So I left and, well, what are you going to do? And there was one point that stuck with me over and over and over again about doing news. And it was this: when there was a story and a leader was in trouble, they had trouble understanding accountability. But when they did something great and their company was thriving and they had, growth and the stock was terrific and everything was wonderful, they had no trouble understanding accountability. This is me, it's like, take credit for everything. No, it was my team, but it was kind of faith. So, but it was just such a real dichotomy to me to remember when there was a story, the leader wouldn't take accountability. The story went on and on. But when it was something great, they said, "I'm totally accountable for that." And they understood the concept of total accountability. And so I decided that was a topic I had clearly been preparing myself for, because it started to come to me that this is what I want to teach. This is a point that if I had known this in my career coming up and being a member of a staff, et cetera, it would have served me so much, because understanding that you don't change the definition of accountability, working, not working, and how we talk about it, you get a great outcome from that. You get lower stress, you get productivity, you get job satisfaction. Super key. So I just worked at it until I refined the message in a way that people could understand it and use it right away.
That's great. Love that story. Love for you to kind of unpack what you were just talking about, that definition of accountability, right? Because it means something different to different people. But what would you define as someone that's an accountable person? What traits do they have? What is that operational definition that you think would be useful?
It's come down to ownership for results, good or bad, without fault, blame, or guilt. So really in one's life, it can boil down to this: If something is not working out, it's going to go one of two ways in how you talk about it. You're going to have an excuse and blame and finger point, and everybody's going to buy it if they want you to buy their reason, their excuses, or you're going to have a reason and learning. So when you go to your boss, something hasn't worked out, you either are coming from, here's the reason that happened, here's what I learned, here's what I'll do differently, or you have an excuse and you begin blaming. You know what? I never really accepted that sales goal to begin with. I don't remember in that meeting us saying that that is what we were going to hit. That was put on us. So don't blame me. I didn't buy it in the beginning. Versus the reason I didn't hit the goal is because we had 2 years of COVID and I didn't start asking questions soon enough. Here's what I'm going to do differently going forward. I own it. So that is investable. Starting to weigh in now in this time of the great resignation, where if we start accepting the excuses of underperformers instead of people who take accountability, the people who take accountability are the ones who are leaving because they're going to say, you know what, I don't want to do the work of the underperformer where you're accepting the excuses and blame. I want to work around a smaller group that takes ownership, has their reason, learns, and moves on. So accountability is ownership of results, good or bad, without fault, without blame, without guilt. Now, I want to talk about 3 characteristics, which you mentioned, that would be this person that you can predict they're going to be like this. The 3 characteristics, they talk to you, not about you. So they're not, yipping about another person, why they're the problem, etc. If you're on that team with that person, you talk to them, not about them. The second is you don't have meetings after meetings. So instead of, I'm not really sure what they were saying. What do you think they meant? What do you think they really want? I don't do that. It's like ask your question in the meeting. The culture's got to be one where it's okay to ask questions. So do I create that environment? Meeting after the meeting often starts this misinterpretation of what we spent all that time getting clear on. And now people will clarifying question. You have to be accountable and do that. And the third is of many, but the third strong one is not rescue, fixing, and saving underperformance. Giving people the opportunity to be held accountable because to work around them, to talk about them, to finger point and blame is demeaning rather than to treat each other like you're completely capable and able. Maybe this isn't what I wanted because I wasn't clear. So again, ownership. What was my role in what didn't work here? And what can I do better going forward? So instead of just busy, 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 lots of things I'm getting done each day, but not productive, gets eaten away by, at the end of the day, I'm going to be accountable for how much I produced today versus I'm going to tell you I was really busy and not really be sure. And I'm very tired too. But those 3 qualities really make a difference in a culture in which accountability is of high value. Talk to you, not about, don't have a meeting after the meeting, and don't rescue victims they've underperformance. Treat people like they're capable and able. Be clear with them and hold them accountable for what they're there to do.
Those are 3 great tools. Definitely agree with those that if you want to be accountable and holding yourself accountable, you need to have those. I like to, though, just kind of have this mindset shift because many people say, okay, I got this, Linda. I'm personally accountable, but I'm working on a project with the team and I'm only accountable for my portion of the project. This whole project, whether it goes the right way or the wrong way, there's other people that own part of this. Now, your mindset shift, which kind of blows people's minds initially, and you have a great example of this, a great story at the beginning of your book, 85% Solution, is in a surgery. And I love that illustration of it. If you could unpack that example, kind of go a little bit deeper into this mindset change for how much you should be responsible for the outcome of a project, whether it's your own personal project or if it's part of a group's effort.
Yeah, in teams, this is a really fascinating and important concept to grasp. And it is a struggle often, unless I use examples like this, and we all can relate to them. But this whole idea of you have part, I have a piece, this is my part, we get into silos, drives people absolutely crazy, is when we start to think about the new math of personal accountability. And the new math is everybody has 100% personal accountability available to them as a theoretical limit. So start with, you all have 100%. So let's say we go in a surgery. You're the person on the table getting the surgery. I don't ever want this to be the case, but let's just say. And before everyone is going to do their part in the surgery, you get to ask them a question. And the question you ask them is, on a scale of 0 to 100%, how much personal accountability are you taking for this being a good outcome, surgeon? For this being a good outcome, anesthesiologist, circulating nurse, even the billing person, not even in the room. How much personal accountability are you taking for this being a good outcome? And if you could ask every single person that question, eye contact, scale of 0 to 100, what answer do you want? Do you want this answer? For my part, I'm 100%. But these two people, they don't get along at all. I've seen them in past surgeries and they sometimes disagree on things. Oh, one time I called out this was going to be on the wrong site. And the surgeon took me out in the hallway and said, don't be calling out things in front of others. Be sure you talk to just me. Hardly a team effort where it's for my part, we're good. The rest is up to these other individuals that I can't control. That's the number one thing. I can't control that. Why are you holding me accountable? Because here's the shift in mindset. I'm 100% personally accountable for the outcomes I produce individually and collectively at the same time. So we have an environment where we agree to that because we go through the education of getting on the same page about what accountability means. And this is where the leader has the biggest shift in thinking. It's not some part share, it's total for individual. Be clear on your role. We have to interdepend to get things done. There are people who try to change lanes right in the middle of things. Hold on a second. Where's your role? And let's be clear and hold each other accountable. So the demarcation point of a high performance team, which usually I don't see until we really build a nice, clear understanding of accountability, is that we hold each other accountable. We hold each other accountable. Why are you talking about this other person and they're not here? Should I go get them so they can hear this too? Oh, you know what? I need to stop this conversation. This is the meeting after the meeting. And right now we're about to decide something different than what we agreed to about the surgery for this patient. And that creates sort of a danger for meaning well, but pulling people off the page. So all of us own and hold each other accountable for what we need to be doing in order to be high performance. And the question has to be, in the past, we've let this go and it's going to stop. So you've got to make a decision. Do you want to be in this kind of environment? And when that starts to take off, nothing like it. Low stress, productive job satisfaction. People get very clear on what success is. And then we keep driving for that didn't work. We have a reason. Here's a solution going forward. And that just keeps going in this cycle. So we start with, I have this role 100%. That's my responsibility. I'm going to execute on it. That's self-empowering in order to overcome the barriers and other people I didn't even pick to be in this room. See them as 100 available, just as I am. And then answer for it, accountability after the fact, ownership for the result, good or bad, without fault, blame, or guilt. So we go through this 3-step process. What are you responsible for? How are you self-empowering to get that risk that you have to take? And then how do you answer for it? Everybody has that 100 available. Now, over my shoulder, you see the little 85% solution. They're like, well, why don't you call it the 100% solution? Here's the thing. It's not called the 100% solution because the data tells us by assessment of a person's mindset, which is what we do to get started and start where people are. If you get to that 85% or higher, it's predictable that you'll go into reason and learning. But if it's lower, you can predict finger pointing and blaming. So we show people personally and privately when they take the assessment. We don't run into the organization and say, oh my gosh, this person's like a 60, run. No, they get to see it for themselves and say, you know what? I accept things that I need to be doing before I'm clear. So that the assessment might say, you know what? Your responsibility level is low and it has indicators to us like you need to get clear before you do ready, fire, aim. How about taking it back a notch? Or maybe, wow, your responsibility level is super high, but your accountability level is low, meaning you're going to finger point and blame the second something isn't where it needs to be. So we can point that out because the mind's getting a little snapshot of itself. And at 85% or higher, you know what? We just acknowledge something. Stuff happens. But how are you going to respond to that? And 85 or higher, super investable. If you're, a startup and you've got the leadership team and they have that 85%, super investable because you can say, this is how we're going to respond. When it's at 75%, you can predict the amount of excusing and blaming that's going to go on. So if you're in a surgery, to go back to that example, you could say, can you just show me what teams are scoring 85% or higher? This is going to be great. Because what? The quality is high, the error rate is low. It's assumed. But when we just take a minute to take a check on ourselves and then each other, it's almost impossible to compete with that. Speed and execution aren't the competitive advantage. Accountability is, because that's what is the foundation of all of it. So it's mine. I have 100% available. If I don't use it, I know the impact for me when I choose it. So you can be how you're being. People say, I want them to be more accountable. If this changes, that doesn't have a choice. So I don't come in and make them more accountable. I help people see where they're demonstrating their lack of accountability. So that's my mantra. You can't mandate accountability. You can only demonstrate it. So once you have the education, everything you're doing from that point forward is intentional and you're choosing. And it's not mine to judge what you choose. Like, I don't want any part of this and it wasn't my fault and I'm running away. Okay, that's going to get a result just as I own this fully. We're going to learn from it and we're going to do better going forward.
Love that and agree with you. But I realize that mind shift is not easy. So many leaders probably need to rewind that and just let that sink in, because the next time you agree to do something, if you agree with this new mindset and the question is posed, how much responsibility will you take for it? Even if you hold yourself personally accountable, this is a whole nother level up. The only acceptable answer is 100%, right?
The only acceptable answer, if you're going to take a leader role, is that I know I have that 100% available. Absolutely. And if you don't think that, don't take it. Because you know what? That's how you're going to be treated. Back in the day of news stories, hey, you know what? You got 2 sets of books going here. Well, what are you asking me for? I'm not an accountant. How would I know? I have 100,000 employees. I can't know everything that's going on. Yeah, real leadership is, I know that quality of individual that says, I'm going to look at you like you have your 100 available too. And the second an excuse comes out of your mouth, I know what I'm dealing with. Am I going to have all the people around me at 85% or higher? I'm not. The way to get them there is to demonstrate what I'm expecting and helping people to get past that whole finger point blame. What is the result you're after? And so oftentimes when I want other people as a leader to be accountable, and the leader will come to me and say, hey, I'm just so frustrated. They're not being accountable. What do I need to do? They start going into, what do I need to do? What are the things? How do I get them there? Well, my question is always the same. What is the result you want that you are not getting? Get that clear. Great. What's the conversation you need to have that you're not having to get that result? Because oftentimes I'll see leaders collapse what they want with how they do it. Instead of waiting for a moment to say to the people, clear what I want. This is what has to happen in order for us to get our funding, to, meet our quarterlies, to, get the next step clear for all of us to move forward. But they just run right past that in the what and then the how and what they expect the what clear. And sometimes an hour later, they're still talking about and they're disagreeing about what the what is. Get the what clear, even if it's going to change tomorrow. how to be accountable for that, then they start to understand, okay, I'll own this. Not, well, let's just see if this works. Hope is not a plan. We know that. So, what will you be accountable for? What is the result you want that you're not getting? Explain that to someone. And you can make one other distinction with it too. When you're really frustrated with someone not being accountable and you're not getting the result you want, you got to ask yourself and them a very honest question. And this goes into DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is the problem you're having with the person whether they can do this or how they're doing it? So whether it's skill, what is the skill this person needs? How they're doing it is style. And our difference often starts playing out in our style. And many times I'll watch an executive go about getting the result. They're clear on the result, but how they're doing it doesn't fit the organization. They never get a chance to go all the way through their how and their style. And so they're interrupted. You need to do it like this. You need to do it the way I recognize. Hold on a second. I'm going to get the result. Can I get there? I'll get rid of me before you have a chance to get rid of me, but you're not letting me get to the result. So let's go back. I'm totally personally accountable for applying my skill in this role to get this result. I understand that. Yeah, but how you're doing it is wrong. No, it's different than you. So there's two very different preferences playing out, work style orientations, we call them, in the workplace, where some of them aren't totally accountable. I get it, but I'm not allowed to use my difference to get us there. And it'll get us there better. If the leadership level doesn't recognize it, it's got to assimilate to match it, and then it gets a chance to play. And that's costing it so much right now in organizations. It's unintentional, but it destabilizes the power of the workforce when we don't see it.
I agree with you. And that's a great distinction to make that I don't think many people are making right now when it comes to that. And in terms of the style, and that they are holding themselves personally accountable. They're doing it in a way that's not looked upon favorably. And as a result, it's a lot of frustration. How about with those that don't hold themselves personally accountable? So let's regress on the accountability spectrum to those that say, it's the outside factors, right? It's the environment, it's COVID, it's my boss, the company, you name it. All of those are a determination of how successful I'm going to be. I'm the victim now, right? I'm not a change agent. That's how do you answer, or how do you move that person along to becoming more accountable, for them to see it more as an internal locus of control? I mean, what's some of those tough love statements that you give them to say, okay, let's get real for a minute?
Well, it's not me. It's always somebody else. Yeah, always that. All right. My very first response, no ifs, ands, or buts, is you're right. You're absolutely right. Not you. What is your point? If it's only happening to you, just you, I could see like maybe you might want to pay attention to the fact that everybody else seems to be fine, but you're the only one that's having this big, huge problem about everybody else is the problem. The wake up call is I want you to notice you're always there when this happens. So, hit number one. Secondly, the fastest to change in the work I do score miserably on the accountability assessment we do. I mean, it's miserable. It's like the lowest in the bunch. And when they hear for the very first time that this 100% is available, or they read it, it's like, oh, that never occurred to me. So the how I get them there, and how I ask anybody who is coaching or mentoring in their organization, where this person's just not performing, they're not striving, they always have a finger pointer of blame, it's just crazy making. I say, what you got to get into is, what is your definition of success for yourself? What is your professional definition of success for yourself? And you've got to create this safe space for them to say, success to me is, being a manager. And I mean, it's never what I expect when I really open the door for, I don't want to know your goals. I really don't. Your goals are your goals. But success, as you define it, is qualitative. And the definition of success, given 2 years of pandemic, sea change in the workforce and how we're getting together to get stuff done absolutely caught so many of us asleep at the wheel of what is success to us now. What's success to us being parents at home, hybrid workplace, trying to get people virtually in teams define success. Because if you have that clear in your mind, the resources are very clear to begin to pick up on. This boss is a resource to me. I can use this person now that I'm clear about what success is to me. So the second I see a lower score in being responsible and accountable personally, that's a hint. It says, okay, hold on a second. You're not clear, because the rest of the book title, The 85% Solution, how personal accountability guarantees success. I can guarantee success for you, but you got to know what success is for you. So page 90 of the 85% Solution, just run to that part and say, okay, that's really a good point. If I'm going to be totally personally accountable for my success, what is success to me? And it's a shocker for so many people, all the way to the CEO, the vice presidents. When I say you're struggling, you are, you don't like this anymore. It doesn't have the same, fun factor to it. Was it ever fun? But there's just this quality missing. And when they get the safety, any of us get the safety to define success, you might have to take some risks to go after that. So I might be, I coach executives all the time. They'll come to their definition of success and say, but my family will be so upset that this isn't, what I want to be doing. This isn't the lifestyle I can support. If I go after success, and I'll say, I will guarantee you it's going to be the opposite. And it has proven out over and over and over again that if you do this thing, you will absolutely, move into a place where you have all of those qualities you want in your life. But the proof's in the pudding. There are so many people that I've assigned the definition of success to, and I never heard it from them again.
So now that you've defined the definition of success, I've seen a lot of leaders and even new and aspiring leaders where they really aren't self-aware and taking responsibility to own it. So they just don't have that self-awareness right then. And how do you make them aware to really build that responsibility to say, you need to start owning these things if you want to move up, if you want to see some career growth in the right direction? Because for so long, they've just been conditioned the other way, that they're just finger pointing, they're blaming other people. They're not really taking the responsibility and say, you know what, regardless if it's a group project, individual project, I need to own it.
Okay, well, I will tell you that sometimes the decision is that they're not going to fit here anymore. And that happens when we all get on the same page. Those individuals who still think they can behave their way out of not owning when they have no interest in doing that, they're gone. And 3 committed people can do a whole lot of people. So part of this is they're not always, what is the word? You can't always save them all kind of a thing. It's like, you do fit somewhere, not here. It becomes more and more obvious. So we give them all the tools, get clear up front, circle back and do the looking back to learn, use high performance contracting, all the ways that when you put it into practice as an executive, now we're starting to move into high performance. And it's like, I don't want anything to do with any of this. Even if I have the tools, even if it's clear. So they'll behave their decision, hoping no one notices. But very quickly, people want to be around our new commitment to each other, because there is nothing like that whole idea of that 100% and the person has this opportunity to live it out. Now, we all come in different levels of mindset at the get-go. So it's not like, I would do the assessment and say, hey, I got an idea. Let's just cherry pick all the 85%ers out of this and let's put them in and the rest can go home. It isn't that. It is every single place that a person is needs something different to thrive. So you can't treat everyone the same. It's not the same as being fair. And something very important as people rise up into the organization, that rising up isn't necessarily their definition of success, especially generationally now. I want lattice opportunity, not ladder opportunity, because a lot of them see, especially in the larger corporations, this doesn't have the same meaning for me and getting up there. It just means time away from my family. You've got to come into the office. You have to, control people at their desk, all that kind of stuff, because that's how we were successful. That's how we made this great big company. But people are ready to be accountable, even though it looks different. And we're proving that over and over and over again, that I will get you results, that you won't be seeing me at a desk. I'm going to, go exercise at 5 and maybe open my laptop at 10, and I will get the work done. So working very differently, but I will be accountable. And there are some that just can't get there, that unless I can see you and monitor your minutes on your computer, how do I know you're working? Because you're clear about the results you expect with people. And so we can have a different reward system than the one that we've got. And that's where it's going to be a struggle too. We have to reward what we want to see in terms of result, not necessarily how people are behaving. There are some non-negotiables for sure. No ifs, ands, or buts. But we really, I see it over and over again, miss the boat when we say, I want the most I can get reasonably out of individual, but let them work in a lattice way of working where it's more opportunity. So you give people what they need to thrive. We broke that down in the other book, The Way to Grow. Way to Grow says you're going to have one of 3 types of employee, and you're going to be one of these 3 yourself. You're going to be either a weed in the garden of accountability, a daisy in the garden of accountability, or an orchid. And the weed is the one you want because they're low maintenance, come in, got dirt, I grow. Talk to you right about, let's not have meeting after meeting. Let's not rescue, fix, and save. And there's this 16 behaviors that go in here, but they demonstrate those things, or are anxious to learn them and be that person. So for them, we give them challenge and we mentor them and we make sure we're clear on what their definition of success is, and don't make the mistake that it's to rise up in the organization necessarily. And maybe give me opportunity to go and create these environments for you all over your organization. And they have the skill set. Then you have daisies. Daisies need coaching because sometimes water, sometimes sun, maybe a little hybrid, they're kind of delicate, but you notice in a very quick manner that they're great, but there's something they avoid budgeting, or they don't like to work in team. And that's a requirement of the job. Or there's an area we can send them to an Institute for Management Studies class and start getting those places, those little pockets that they can improve to be the full package. There, you coach them or get them a coach. Sometimes bosses are the worst coaches. What last thing you want? I've seen that happen all the time. I say, no, 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 no. You don't coach them on that. You're terrible yourself. Get them the coaching they need for that thing. And then you have the orchid. The orchid is, they need steam. It's too hot. It's too cold. Where's their special food? Turn me to the left. The sun needs dipping. They just suck you dry. It's nonstop. They need to be managed. So you got to manage them every single day. I don't let the culture just land on them. And I absolutely don't let them get passed around the organization. Hi, we have a beautiful flyer for you. We'd like your department to have it now. And then you pass it on, and it doesn't come with any paperwork, i.e. a performance evaluation that said what the heck was going on. So passing on orchids, the orchids, as I said earlier, are the fastest to change, because when they usually score kind of lower on the assessment, and they don't have any self-awareness other than they're pretty, unless you have a career orchid. And career orchids will find bosses who rescue victims. Career orchids will find them and work for them, because that boss doesn't like conflict, doesn't want to hold anybody accountable. They get passed around to that boss, and that boss is exhausted and tired and resentful, because it's like, oh, you need to be taken care of. And in order to get our goal, I've got to once again go in. And it's like, you know what? This person's playing you. And no, but you might get that. But most of the time it is someone who isn't self-aware, as you said. And I have orchid CEOs sometimes that have, high performance, lead performers that come in and they want to go and, why you don't need to control me. What is the problem you're having with me? How I'm doing this, or whether I can do this? Let's go back. And with the workforce change, that's become really common. And we've heard this reverse mentoring. They're tech savvy. They grew up with technology. And now we've got the older CEOs and even VPs that don't realize, okay, hold on a second. I need to change my lens so that I can see you and how you do work and get so much better at what result I'm looking for instead of how to do your job. This is the way we've always done it. Look at us. Look at all our wealth. Yeah, but your people are leaving. No one wants to work for you. You have no experience of driving home a different way. That frightens you, let alone listening to them about what they need to get the same result. So it's everything from, small startups that need funding and they want to behave to huge corporations where they've always done it this way to why are people leaving so they can create their own culture. Women in particular left in droves, continue to leave in droves because they can create the culture that they want to work in. And they see themselves as totally personally responsible. Look at the payback rates on loans. Women do it so much better. So they're more accountable by measure and performance every way possible. And COVID wasn't a big lift from the standpoint of we were doing a lot of all that all along. And now it just it put a light on it. Now you got a CEO at home and kids are running back and forth in the background and socialize something we were doing in large part anyway. I'm not saying everyone, it is a generalization, but a lot of it did come down to that. So yeah, it's my energy to teach this concept and all the little gems and nooks and crannies and hits in the head for the people who can think about it differently comes from what happens when an individual, a team, a leadership group gets on the same page about this. And then, we give ourselves grace basically to say, you know what? We're going to take the extra time to be clear. We're going to care about each other enough to hold each other accountable. We're going to do the harder things, take action and risk and self-empower beyond barriers because everybody's dealing with them. But yeah, that kind of workforce, speed and execution is exhausting. And so that's not the only tool in your bucket. It's this other thing that you've got to be ready for, which is why you've got to be ready for it. You can't apply the same food we did to work it, which is why it's really important for me. And you know this about my practice, Charles. I have to make sure that when I do take on, a client or a client team, they're ready because it doesn't make any sense to try, let's see how you like this. It's like I can do an assessment and tell you, let's go. Or, hey, hold on a second. There's a couple of things you need to do first to become just well managed, let alone high performance. If you're not just doing some basic things, the assessment saying there's just an epidemic of finger pointing and blaming going on, and nothing in the foreseeable future is going to stop it. Let's work on those things first, because this is a rigor that when you understand it, you just become super annoying to others, but not necessarily effective. But if we all go on it together, we start to give each other a little bit of grace and say, yeah, I used to do that. I know I need to stop. Thank you for pointing it out. And I don't like you anymore. It does create a pressure up from if your workforce starts to get the idea of it, the leaders have to, they have to level up too.
I
So
would imagine that's a big transformation and a big mindset shift for everyone. And really getting back to that finger pointing and blaming, common thing that I hear a lot is, well, okay, I'm going to rescue, fix, and save. I hear it from many leaders that say it's just easier for me to do the work because I know they're either not going to do it well enough. Maybe they're perhaps too controlling, or it's too much anxiety and stress to give it away with the hope or with the training necessary to make sure they can be successful in doing that. What is your response to those that say, it's just easier for me to do it, and that's why I prefer to keep that?
well, so all of us can relate to this if you have kids in particular. It's like you're going to talk to and hold them accountable for what they should be doing. And you think, you know what? It's just easy to do myself. Or this isn't exactly right. Person handed me the report. There's errors in it. Their job is proofreading and I'm fixing stuff. And it's like, oh, I'll just fix it. And so, yeah, that comes to a screeching halt. Is it really easy to do it yourself? Oh, I love my boss. I love my manager. Why? Because they do my job for me. They take care of everything versus there is a point that you have to get to say, I will stop doing that. And then I've got to get you prepped up as Charles. Charles, in the past, I've taken care of this. I'm not going to do that anymore. It treats you like you're not capable. You are. So is this your best work? Because this is what I'm going to judge you on in the past. So you have to take ownership of how we got in this horrible situation where you love me, but I'm starting to resent you. And I say, I got myself here and I let this go in the past and I'm going to stop. So is it easier to do it yourself because you're tired and getting resentful and they're not learning a thing? They're not going to be ready for it. And do you want your kid coming out of college treated that way, where somebody says, oh, I'll just take care of it? By the time that's over, they're not able to do anything and they're not developed. So it is a decision that what's more important is the work we're here to do and the company's success. All that other stuff is really just about me being liked, taking care of it. It's all the, oh, everybody's so busy. No, it's you got to get to what gets rewarded. And if I reward you for developing your people and giving up the rescue, fix, and save, and I just finished a debrief with a group of leaders, and we had rated on a scale of 1 to 5 how much rescue, fixing, and saving was going on. And they're like 2. I do it all the time. I want it to be in a 5. We don't do that. And so it started at 2 and they came back with a much stronger number and said everything about the demeanor of the group and how it's going is so much better. The fact they support each other in doing it. Is it hard to give up? Yes. But tell the truth. Do you want to be liked or do you want to be effective? And if you want to be liked, you're not going to give up rescue, fix, and save. But effective is a little more courage to self-empower beyond the risk of they don't like me, you like you. Make sure a family member likes you and then start doing the hardest thing. It is one of the tougher areas. And by the way, if you rescue, fix, and save, don't call yourself a leader. You're a manager. You're just tactically managing things. Leaders say this has to stop. It's eating up all of our good mind, creativity, and innovation because we're not getting people in that place where they've got to come through and they will. You don't keep them at that screeching pitch level all the time, but you say, this is where we got to do our best thinking. And I'm not going to let you just go and take care of things. People will step up. And boy, have I seen that happen like nobody's business, really. So, yeah, big champion of don't rescue, fix, and save.
That's great advice to help those leaders struggling with that rescue, fix, and save mentality. Before we end the episode, just want to give some of those signs, common signs that accountability might be lacking in your organization. First is, and you list 5 of them. I think they're all great. I'll go through the 5 real quick. Maybe you can just speak on the one that you kind of see now as being the most common one, if there is one. One is gossip. Gossip is accepted as a form of communication. 2, there is a culture of treating everyone the same. This is thought to equate to being fair. Number 3, employees are focused on keeping their jobs and not doing their jobs. 4, agreements are broken without consequence. And 5, the majority of a manager's time is spent babysitting. So any one of those or a couple of those that you find or that you've seen recently that have received more weight?
They're also good. The very first one, that's talk to, not about. Take the problem to the person you're having with. And that meeting after the meeting stuff. Hey, and also meeting during the meeting. I know you guys are out there doing that. You're instant messaging each other. And it's just taking that ick away. What was number 4?
4 was agreements are broken without consequence.
Yeah, or not even made in the first place. So one of the tools we use in accountability, so powerful over and over again, is get a clear agreement. Instead of, I think what they meant was, I go back to my boss, we've got a tool, it's called clear agreement, and say, boy, this has got a lot of moving pieces and parts. I don't need a project management sheet. I just need to be clear. Is this what you want? Is this what the outcome needs to be? Is this the stake in the benefit? So it's this wonderful tool. And I've now been at a VP level that organizations are like, this is so good. Well, why don't you use it? I don't like to write things down. Yeah, you know why? Because then it gives you all the little trap doors. So those 5, actually, those are really good. Being clear up front. And so we've taught people to say, is this a good time for a clear agreement so that we're all, going after the same thing at the same time? Sometimes when I get the group afterwards and I'll say, okay, you took on this task for role, let's get out the clear agreement. And we take a half an hour before everyone is clear on what we said yes to. I mean, seriously, we went out of the room. I said, did you ever just stop and get clear together? No. And everybody goes off, works hard on completely different things because they're not clear. You are totally personally accountable. for being clear about the role, the job, all of it. So you got to ask clarifying questions on an ongoing basis and own it.
That's a great way to end the episode, and a great call to action is have those clear agreements. Linda, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
My pleasure. Anytime. Give me a call. I could go on for hours.
That is great. And we will have definitely a part 2 and more, hopefully, in the future. Remind our listeners how they can get in contact with you.
My website is my name, lindagalindo.com. Go there. My blogs, my materials, all of it is there. Questions, be happy to hear from you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Linda, very much for being on this episode. And this concludes this episode of the Good Leadership Podcast. If you'd like to subscribe, this podcast can be found both on Apple and Spotify, and can also be accessed on the Institute for Management Studies website at ims-online.com. And until next time, remember, it's not what you know that makes a difference, but what you do consistently.